Hey, I'm Zsolt and welcome back to the Sketch Your Mind conference recordings. We're at session 6 out of 16 and this one is truly unique. It's a ride through Jerry's brain. If you're new to the series, you'll find all the resources linked below, including the big Excalibur whiteboard where I'm collecting notes from every session. I keep adding to it as people share their takeaways, so check back from time to time. You'll also find something special for this one, a direct link to the thought in Jerry's own brain that connects to this conference. Now, a few words about Jerry Michalski. He's the founder of Open Global Mind and an expert on trust. But he's also one of the true pioneers of personal knowledge management. Back in 1997, when TheBrain was first launched, Jerry was there, literally at the press event. And he's been using it ever since. His brain has now grown to over 620,000 thoughts, making it the world's largest living example of long-term digital note-taking. What's more, every one of these notes are hand-curated by Jerry. No automation, no AI dumping thoughts. All these notes have first passed through Jerry's first brain before landing in his second. In this session, Jerry takes us on a fast-paced, free-associative tour of his brain. We jump from idea to idea, from design to philosophy, from person to concept, and somehow it all connects. It's not a linear talk, it's an experience of thinking in motion. Jerry's brain is especially meaningful to me personally. Before building Excalibur for Obsidian, which visualizes markdown notes in a graph similar to TheBrain, I spent nearly 2 decades using TheBrain myself. Jerry and I first met through that shared fascination, and his work continues to inspire how I think about visual knowledge. At the end of this video, you'll hear the music I composed for Jerry's session. If you'd like to support my work, you can get the conference album, join the next visual thinking workshop, grab my book, Sketch Your Mind, or try the Obsidian Excalibur plugin. All links are in the description below. Now, buckle up and enjoy this fascinating ride through Jerry's brain.
Brilliant, Zsolt. Thank you so much. This is I've been in watching some of the sessions and cheering from the sidelines, and it's been delightful. Really nice. My name's Jerry, and I'm a mind mapper. And if you get the joke, which is this is how AA meetings start, you know, my name's Jerry, and I'm an alcoholic or something like that. Everybody's supposed to call back, "Hi, Jerry," and I'm going to go straight to my brain and share screen because my presentation will be done in the brain, and I will tell the story from there. So let me get rid of this thing and go over here. First thing I want to do is say thanks to Zsolt. This is really, this kind of came out of nowhere. It's an inspired thing. Here is the Sketch Your Mind conference, and I've been taking notes in my brain as this thing has happened. So Zsolt, I first met or heard of in 2022. So here's this thought in my brain was created in 2022. He once worked at Shell. He does Sketch Your Mind. He's part of a group of people who care about visualization I call the Viz Posse. Most of these people don't actually know that they're there. And then if I go down here, what you see scrolling to the left here, these are breadcrumbs. So as I click on thoughts, they scroll off to the left. Up at the top, this is a pin board. So I have put this talk up on the pin board. I've also put the reception for Sketch Your Mind just so I don't lose my place and I can find my way back here. And in fact, if I go here, you'll see that this is a Ring Central event. Here's Ring Central, which is a workplace collaboration platform. I guess I should have more of those in there, but they got money from Kozla Ventures, which also funded DoorDash, which does same-day delivery. So do these entities. this is a little taste of what I normally do in my brain. Let me start. This is the mind map that I drew when I was thinking, what do I want to talk about for the half hour I get to speak. I'm going to go a little bit quickly, but I want to sort of follow this map. So I was the first stop in TheBrain's launch press tour. And Harlan Hugh, the guy who created the software, and his then president, Don Block, came through and basically showed me this thing. And I still have in my house, this is the packet that they mailed me to confirm our appointment on Friday, December 19th, 1997 at 9 a.m. in our offices in Manhattan. So I still have that. And as a result of this briefing, I wrote this issue. And the very weird thing is, and if you follow the link that I hope Zsolt has pinned in the chat, let me make sure. Zsolt, if you'll add the brain pin, everybody can follow this presentation from there. If you follow this link, if you click on this little icon, it'll send you to a PDF file of that article that still exists online. One of the things that I realized was that there are a lot of tools for thinking, which is the category that I put the brain under. I will come back to this thought in a second, but let me go back to the presentation and talk about what this is. This is mind mapping software that I did not create. It's created by this little company that's still alive in Los Angeles called TheBrain. I am the lead user of TheBrain. I've put 620,000 thoughts in this brain, linked by more than 1.5 million links, all by hand over almost 28 years. In December, it'll be 28 years. If you do the math, I add about 50 or 60 things to my brain every day. And if you think about it, you probably see 50 or 60 things a day that are worth doing, including in your projects, awesome articles you should put in, things like that. So let me go to a couple things. First, I'm really glad that we learned how to turn the confetti off in Ring Central. And I'm sad that the display doesn't go full screen because really I want you to be able to see the text that I'm showing you. And in my beliefs, I will say that the brain is really good for context, but it's not a great presentation tool. So I'm using it as a presentation tool here just to give you a really immersive experience of it, but I don't use the brain generally as a presentation tool, but I'll come back to that in a little bit. The brain is not for everyone. One thing I've realized, one of my beliefs from using the brain, is that different people have different representational schemes in their head that feel comfortable. This one felt comfortable the moment that Harlan showed me the demo of the software. The very first time, my wet brain, now I have to have a retronym, my onboard brain basically said, oh my gosh, this is how I think. I just coined the term polytoolicity in the sense of there are lots of different tools for thought, the category I just showed you, and some of them work and some of them don't. Gene Bellinger, who is a really notable thinker in this space, who is an ace using Kumu, who has used the brain off and on as well, and kind of regrets not having used it for longer, because I have this weird thing where the mind map I'm showing you right now is the same mind map that I started in January of 1998. The reason it has 620,000 thoughts in it is that I have never found a reason to create a second brain. And for me, everything is deeply intertwinkled. So here's Gene in my brain. He's a Kumu black belt. He's a brain user. He also uses Roam. He has a thing called Systems Wiki. He's also part of the visualization posse, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then here you'll see, wherever you see a little red triangle icon, obviously this is a Zoom link. So other beliefs, using the brain helped me realize that we are an amnesic society, that we don't have, when I have audiences, I say, who saw something online that was worth remembering today? And all the hands go up. And then I'm like, who has a reliable place to put their links? Who knows where they're going to put the things that they saw? And like, I get chuckles and groans and grimaces. And what I realized was the reason we as a public are easy to spin is that we don't have a shared collective memory that we can rely on. We've got Wikipedia, but it's an encyclopedia, and it's not meant to be this other thing, which I'll also talk about a little bit in a sec. So that's one of my beliefs. And the companion belief is that knowledge should accumulate. And so one of the things that this brain does for me is, as you'll see, it allows me to build things over time and for knowledge to accrue or accumulate, which I find is really, really important. The reasons I like the brain is that it feels infinite yet manageable, and it has a sense of orientation. I always know where up is. And I see rubber band displays. There's a whole bunch of other displays, but they don't have a sense of up. In scuba diving, there's a saying, always trust the bubbles. So if you're caving or something like that and you get disoriented, just let some bubbles loose and the bubbles will always go up. That's really important with a tool. So last thing I'll say is, your tool for thought has to have a low mental overhead for you. And there's this trade-off between what does the tool do and how does it fit my representational scheme, and how do I communicate with other people and what are they going to be able to process? And I have a hard time processing too many places, too many things. So all my brain data is in one place. I put all my memories, all my things in here. I don't worry about different tools, different vaults, different spaces, different wikis, whatever. I do use wikis a lot and things like that, but that's not what I'm doing. So my flow is very much like this. Let's see, I wanted to go, here we go. So I'll just give you an example. Just a couple days ago, there were a couple of good articles that were sitting in tabs, long reads sitting in tabs in my browser about Peter Thiel. I put Peter Thiel in my brain in 2004, so he's been there for a bit. This is a link to his Wikipedia page. So if I click there, it'll launch Wikipedia to Peter Thiel. He has invested in Friendster, Facebook. I use these lateral links for investments. So Jovent, Blip TV, Big Think, Declara, et cetera, et cetera. And then he has been talking a lot about the Antichrist, which I think is an interesting thing. Here's the Antichrist. I think I put the Antichrist in my brain in 2014. It's part of Christian eschatology. It says there will be false prophets. It has to do with the catacon and a bunch of stuff I don't particularly know. I don't really know. But he's way deep into it. And there were a couple of really good articles, one of which was an interview from the Interesting Times podcast that Ross Douthat, I don't know exactly how to spell his name. He's been doing this interview series that are actually quite good. And so in this interview, I took notes by saying, I copied and pasted a couple things here. And then in the middle, in the notes field down here, you'll see that I copy pasted a couple paragraphs as well. I thought this was a really interesting and kind of nutty essay. And then under it, I put this article that points up to the one I just talked about. And this one is, I think, by Wolfgang Palaver. Nope, I am wrong. That is actually a person mentioned in the article. Oh, it's by Laura Bullard. Laura Bullard wrote this article, and I don't have anything else from her or by her. Sorry about that. But here are notes I took from this article. And one of my little conventions is when I like an article a lot, I'll put excellent at the end of the label or the name. And you'll notice that I try to be, except when I'm copying and pasting a couple sentences, I try to be really short and kind of really succinct with how I name thoughts. One of the questions that I think is open here is, does generative AI obsolete tools for thinking? So here I am. I've spent almost 28 years kind of obsessively, but with very high payoff for me, because I can find things again and I can assemble ideas and all that. So for example, this thought is under hot questions that ChatGPT's virality raises. So in late 2022, I created the thought, we are now in the Gen AI world. And then I said, well, what are the big questions? Is generative AI creative or innovative? What are the best outcomes of generative AI? What jobs will Gen AI replace and how quickly? That's a really big one, right? So one of the questions in this whole panoply is, hey, why bother? Why bother doing this? And I actually think this is the TLDR to what I want to write about this shortly. But I actually think that whatever doesn't go through your wetware, the neurons in your head, you don't know exists in the world. And so the work of, and I like how in the last session, we were talking about this, that the work of thinking about things is super important. We don't want to offload our thinking to these new intelligences. We want to use them in some way that's really going to be synergistic, collaborative, and collective. And I think we're now going to enter an age of collective intelligence, where intelligence includes these new intelligences used well. And I'm really looking forward to that. That's something I'm excited for. the brain is not a good storytelling tool, so I think we need more power tools for storytelling. My favorite one, talk in the chat if you ever use this. I used Prezi for a very, very long time. They had 2 makeovers. Their first makeover, they got rid of their really fancy, funky UI, and they made it look more like PowerPoint. Their second makeover in 2021 destroyed the zoomable whiteboard that I was using to tell stories in. So I canceled my account, and I haven't used Prezi since. I hate it when software has to look like Microsoft Office. And one of the things about tools for thought is that they can be very unique, be very different, and I love that. I wanted to say also that I've been taking notes during this conference. So we were just in the visual sense making session with Stephen Anderson. And here's Stephen. He used to work at Mural. He works at a company called Nozomi now. He wrote the book Figure It Out. And here is his session. And these are the things he was telling us during the session. These are some things that got mentioned in the chat or by him. Here's Dynamic Land, for example, which I put in my brain in 2018, back when it was launched. And I put it under communities trying to fix world problems, which is an interesting place to kick around. And so there are some lessons. Here we go. I've been collecting up lessons I've learned from 27 plus years of using my brain. And in December, I'll update this thought to read 28 years plus years of using my brain. But there are too many here to go through. But one of the things I wanted to point to is that I feel like this brain is an extended mind. And here I'm pointing to, or an extended self, here I'm pointing to Annie Murphy Paul's recent book, The Extended Mind, The Power of Thinking Outside the Brain. And I'd love to have a conversation with Annie because another way to look at this is that I feel like I'm already a cyborg in some sense. And the word cyborg triggers some people. It turns out I did a little poll, and about 20% of the people I polled said, no, don't use cyborgs, don't say cyborg. And then the other 80% said, I know exactly what you mean. Like if you use Excel or PowerPoint or Photoshop and you don't even think about the command structures, but beautiful things come out the other end, you're already a cyborg and you are well integrated with software and what software is doing. So I feel like my nearly 28 years of using the brain make me some kind of cyborg. And the frontier that I'm at right now is, oh my God, how do I connect it to AI? And how does that change everything? How does that change me? How does that change my life, et cetera, et cetera? And I'm excited and a little scared about that frontier because I watch other people who have done a much better job than I have of integrating generative AI into their life and work. I'm still at the fringes of that. I'm using it in a way that makes me really happy, but it's a hard kind of thing to do. Now, the storytelling thing is really curious for me because I find Prezi I loved because I could sort of follow a path and I could do some animations and I could put drawings next to each other. You'll see that the brain is just text with links. There's hardly any images unless I attach or paste a link to a thought. So there's really not a lot of visuals. And the other presentations at this conference have been highly, highly visual. But I'm really interested in what the future power tool for storytelling will be. And I really want one that actually connects back to the original nuggets, the original ideas. So one of my problems with graphic facilitation is that I would leave an event where there had been a fabulous graphic facilitator, and I would later get a PDF booklet of the pages that this person had drawn, all of which were inert and all of which were useful mostly to the people who were in that room, because the context makes sense and it refreshes your wet brain to see what got drawn back in the day. But when they drew income inequality, why couldn't they suddenly go to income inequality? Here's income inequality in the United States. Here's income inequality in general. These are, actually, let's go back to the one in the US. Here's an article from the New York Times. Here's many more. Here's a Wikipedia entry. Here's a book on Amazon. Here's an entry from a blog. Here's an Atlantic article. These are all things that people have written and said that I thought were worth remembering about income inequality. So why doesn't the note-taking during a meeting connect to the thing. And when I say knowledge should accrue, this is kind of what I'm saying. That the best articles I've seen, and when there are too many things underneath, I will subdivide. So I will say, there's America's Great Divergence, a couple articles about that, the Great Divergence, America's Great Divergence, et cetera, about the West's rise. These are all concepts that are durable, that will happen for a long time. This apparently comes from Samuel Huntington, a very famous historian who also came up with the Clash of Civilizations, another thing he's very, very famous for, and which leads down another interesting set of little tunnels. Then finally, I'll talk about some brain-related projects that I'm working on. One thing is, I needed a place to describe how do these tools for thinking meet. I'm very, very interested in me comparing notes with anybody else using any other tool for thought, not just in the brain, but in any tool. What does that look like? And how do we then connect to each other's mappings of how things work? And how do we have a productive conversation so that we don't go over the same arguments over and over and over again? How do we complexify, as Adam Grant would say, how do we complexify a topic and then figure out that there's 60% of things that we agree on. Let's pick only the 40% that we disagree on, and let's go deeper on those and leave a memory, leave a trail for ourselves and for others of how that works. So I needed some kind of funny metaphor for this. So I bought the domain thebigfungus.org. You can go there. There isn't much there. But I love mycelial metaphors. Mycelial metaphors are really fantastic. And I think that what we're doing is we're in the early stages of creating this big fungus that lives between us, that is this way that we can refer to what we know and how it works. And the problem is this brain thing scares people off. So it's probably not going to look like the brain. And many other representations are very hard to navigate. If I get into a Miro board or a mural board, it's really fun for the first 6 or 7 panes. I get 20 things going, 30 things going in a Miro board. I either need a new Miro board or I'm in trouble trying to get around this one, right? Many of you have probably had that problem. One of the things I love about the brain is that it always looks like this. It always has one active thought in the middle of the page, in the middle of the screen, and then other things that are connected to it. I've made all these connections. Like these are all things that I've done. So that's, let me go back here. So that's the big fungus and what I'm trying to do around just how do we connect to each other? And it might be that these LLMs are actually the way to connect to each other. For a while, I was looking for protocols or APIs or something else that might connect tools for thought to each other. But it turns out that writing a model context protocol, which is an Anthropic offer to the community, writing a model context protocol for software like TheBrain allows you to talk to the brain with a variety of LLMs, and then we're off to the races. I haven't gotten there quite yet. I am right on the cusp of doing that, and I'm really, really excited because I'm wondering, what comes after that. And then the last thing I'll say, and then I'll just go to Q&A, is I'm trying to figure out how to do better virtual brain talks. I think that I do keynote speeches for a living. If you'd like to help me figure this out, ping me. I'm easy to find. Send me an email or connect to me on LinkedIn and say, hey, that better virtual brain talk thing. Let's talk. But I'm really interested in events online. I think virtual is better than in person here because in person, I have to make sure everybody can see everything properly. Here, I can ask people to just go full screen and see the same thing and be completely immersive. But how do we dive in and talk about things together with some visual support and with a memory that gets improved as we talk? Because mostly when I'm in a meeting, I'm curating, as I showed you when I'm in my note-taking for events. So here's the notes that I took for Zsolt's opening session. He talked about De Bono and the 6 thinking hats. Well, I put Edward De Bono in 1998 in August. So he's one of the first people I actually entered in my brain. He put him under creativity specialists and experts. Here's a bunch of others. But why can't we talk around context that is useful that is persistent over time. And this amnesia thing really matters to me. And I'm trying to figure out how to communicate that. Is this a workshop format? Are these talks? I'm not exactly sure. So with that, I will go back and stop the monologue and see what's been asked and what's happening in the chat. Zsolt, feel free to step in if you want to. I'm actually going to go. Shall I just go to the top question?
Yeah, I think let's start with the top question and then go through these.
Sounds great. John Don says, are you always adding anything you read, watch to your brain? Because for me, it feels useless to add everything when I have nothing to think or write about. So yes, but it has to pass a threshold. Gordon Bell at Intel famously recorded, he wore a video camera and recorded everything and logged his whole life. And there's something called life logging that was kind of hot some years ago. It's overwhelming to do everything. You don't want to do everything. It's just way too much. So I think that I'm sort of using my judgment about, oh, this is worth remembering. I'm going to want to have known I saw this once later. And that's my criterion. And when I add things to my brain, I'm adding for two audiences. One is, of course, me, but the other is the random person who discovers my brain and comes and wants to browse around. And some people need my help to browse around the brain, but there's a group of my friends who, and people I don't even know are accessing it, who have figured out how to access my brain and make good use of it without my presence, which I love. So I want more of that. Marlon Wiley says, if there was a feature or function you would like to have alongside your brain vault, what would it be and why? Lots of things. One is I'm really interested in not seamless software environments, but seamful software environments. I want to be able to shift from a brain-like display into a Prezi-like display into a Kumu-like display into something else, but looking at the same data. So I would love for the data to be separate from the tools. Right now, all data is in proprietary storage formats connected to the tool because that's the only way the software gets fast enough. If we separated the data and created a rich layer of soil, basically, that's data, then we could shift how we're looking at things. And then I could use a storytelling tool on the same data, and we could then go to town talking about not only telling a story, but then having a discussion afterward where each person can fork and pull parts of the story, participate in the discussion, all those kinds of things. So that's one big thing. And then the second big thing, in TheBrain 14, which is the version I'm using right now, they added two kinds of AI. So you'll see a little AI icon that's up on the screen up here. And then there's also one in the notes field down here. I don't use either of them much. One of them does things that I do by hand and would make it hard to mesh. The other one I don't use often enough because I just haven't made it a custom. But in TheBrain 15, I think they're going to go to town a lot more. And when AI is in the conversation here, I think a lot of things change. I do things manually all the time. And there are things that I do manually that simply take time that could be very gently and easily automated, but still where I see that the thing went into the brain. One of the things I don't want to do is add things to the brain automatically. The brain early on, it had a function where you could crawl a website and it would add a thought for every page on the website. I never, ever, ever used that because I don't want a bunch of stuff polluting the namespace in my brain that I didn't see that I don't know is worth going into the brain. So longish answer to your question. Amanda asks, would you call your notes more a curation to aid thinking rather than forming specific opinions on topics? Very strongly both. What's interesting is the ways I use my brain are in some cases what you would do in a database. Just for fun, I'm going to go to Brad Pitt because everything is in my brain. So are actors and movies and popular culture. So here's Brad Pitt. Here's Angelina Jolie. Here's Brangelina, which is one of many single name couples like Jovanka, Dick and Liz, Billary, Bennifer, Tomcat. They broke up. Too bad about that. But if I go back to Brad, he acted in these. This is not the full complete list of his movies. However, this is the movie Fury, which is about the Sherman tank, which is named after William Tecumseh Sherman, who was in the U.S. Civil War. It's turtles all the way down in some sense. Now, One of the things that I wanted to point to, and thank you for reminding me about it, is, and did I put it in here? I think I did. Good. Is this. During the pandemic, you all remember the pandemic when we were all ushered into Zoom and left to sort of make do by ourselves? In the pandemic, for kind of no reason at all, I decided to do some videos about the global financial crisis. And here is the playlist of the 3 videos that I created about the causes of the global financial crisis, et cetera, et cetera. And my thesis was SNP, which I got to by working in my brain a lot. And what I realized was, oh my gosh, we have been cutting long-term relationships all over the place. And the SNP thesis was very much about ways we snipped long-term relationships in finance, paving the way for the global financial crisis. Where'd they go? So the AAA ratings, basically the ratings houses became transaction mills, never said no, and eventually rated trash as AAA rated bonds, securities. That creates moral hazard. It was a conflict of interest. It was all kinds of bad things. And yet Fitch, Moody's, and Standard & Poor's still exist as they did then. So this is, I think, coming to conclusions and doing other kinds of work. So I find that the brain is useful because, in part, I can do some of the listy stuff, but I can also do the thinky stuff, all in the same space and all connected to everything I've ever cared about putting in the brain. Kevin Schneider says, how do I remember what I added? Like when I said I added a person from 1990, but how do I not accidentally enter a value twice and thus may create unnecessary duplicate entries? Oh yeah. So I've learned over time that I need to check first if I put somebody in the brain or an article. So I will search my brain first. And luckily it has a very, very quick search function that will show you, as you type the string, it has a type down buffer that will show you all the thoughts in this brain that match whatever the string is. And that means also it's very quick to find a thought, which without that feature, the brain would be kind of worthless. The ability to really go through and search and find things quickly is essential to proper use of the brain. Unfortunately, the brain doesn't detect the difference between HTTP and HTTPS, which is a little tricky. So sometimes I do extra searching for that. That's actually a feature I wish they fixed. Because I've found that I've added a couple of duplicate entries because of that. But otherwise, I try to be really careful. And when I find duplicate entries, I manually get rid of them. I will attach them to each other, figure out which is the dominant one, and then copy over, basically link over all of the links from the other one to it. Jose says, have you ever thought of exporting it? Is it difficult to export the information in my second brain to any other platform? The archive format for the brain is basically a big bag of JSON objects. And I had a call going for a while during a pandemic called Free Jerry's Brain. We didn't manage to free me from the Brain software, which is proprietary. And I love them, but I really wish I could sort of do stuff with it that I can't do because it's not open source. And so if you do a brain archive, that export is browsable, usable, and we did a couple things sort of inspecting it. There's also an API to the brain, so you can sort of query it. And as I said, with MCP in the future, hopefully, that might actually really explode and be really useful. So the problem with exporting the brain is that there is no other software I know of that understands this format and what to do with it. So I would have to vibe code some new app that does something with the brain and gives me a display more or less like this, and then does other kinds of things. So good question.
Yeah, and maybe just to comment on this, because that's how we originally bonded a couple of years ago. Because I did export my brain, I converted it to Markdown, and then in Obsidian I was missing the brain interface, and I created a mockup for myself, which is nowhere near as slick and cool as the brain. I've been trying to convince the Obsidian devs that we need the same sort of interface instead of the graph view we have today, which is completely useless. This is super useful. I'm still working on it, but yeah, so you can export it. And the reason I left the brain was exactly because you cannot extend it. I wanted a sketching tool, and I couldn't build it in. So I had to look for something else. Anyway, I don't want to interrupt the question, but I thought.
Well, that's great. And Excalibrain is the closest thing to the brain I've ever found anybody do. So then I was like, oh yeah, I've got to talk to Zsolt. We must meet. That was great. Thank you for doing that. Next question, Randolph. What are my main internal rules or legends to set meaning to different kinds of links in the brain? You will notice that the default color to the brain is white. The default color to thoughts in the brain is white. That gradient blue background is what it shipped with in 1998. I have not changed the blue background. It's possible to put any image you want back there. I prize legibility, and I find that the blue just seems to work. So I've never changed that. And I use two other colors. I use yellow. Yellow means there's something here. Yellow is more about facts. And then I use purple. And purple is an opinion. So here you see a lot of purple because these are conclusions that I came to. Ratings houses became transaction mills. They never said no to a deal. They eventually rated trash securities as AAA. That's an opinion. So purple for me is opinions. What value do I, Tony asks, what value do I attribute to impermanence? There's a really interesting question here about forgetting. Like, is it worth forgetting? And unfortunately, when I say that we are in an amnesic society, I mean that too many things are too evanescent. They're too impermanent. Then it would be really nice if we had a steadier, more reliable memory, shared memory that we could refer to together. I think impermanence and forgetting are super important. And my wet brain forgets stuff all the time. I don't delete a lot of things from my brain because what I find is that I have saved a lot of links over the years that get no Google love, no Google juice, because they had very few inbound links, so their page rank is low. And I will find things that will not show up on a Google search, but they won't be the website may not be alive anymore, but they may be in the Internet Archive. Thank you also Brewster Kahle and company for doing the archive, which is a brilliant work. And so forgetting is important, but we forget too much. Maybe I'll just do that as a shorthand. Mary asks, how do I use this in my work life as a professional speaker? Not talking about the brain. Great question. I don't compose speeches in the brain software. So I don't use this as an outliner for articles. I will go open a Google Doc or open a Google Slide, which is what I mostly use these days, unfortunately, since I abandoned Prezi, but I mostly use Google Slides. I'll go there and I'll start doing the work over there. But all the things that I care about in the topic are in my brain, and I will do kind of as you see here, I will do note taking. Actually, let me go back to the conference. I will connect up. Here's the book Atomic Habits, which got mentioned by James Clear. I will do that when I'm busy thinking about what to do. And I won't use the brain as a present. I will rarely use the brain software as a presentation in front of clients. Kevin says, also, if I say work and then get an idea for a completely different project, non-work related, and suddenly get an idea about, again, something else, how do I manage those? Like, do I have a dump place and sort later, or do I immediately sort? Excellent question. I do not have a thought called things to file later. I tried that briefly for a while, a long time ago, didn't work whatsoever. There's also something called the Brain Box, which from your browser, you can send links into the Brain Box to sort later and to file in later. I have never managed to groove that and make that a habit, so I don't do that. So generally, I'll leave tabs open until later, and then I process things into the brain, and I do them as quickly as I can. And because I've been using the software so long and I'm kind of a cyborg with it, it's very quick and easy for me to add things to the brain. It's incredibly quick, actually. So I'm kind of doing that all the time, and I switch context constantly, which is likely not good for productivity, but it's really good for pattern finding, pattern matching, and associative memory. So one of my native skills before I ever saw the brain, I'm a pattern finder. I see parallels between things that many people don't think are similar, and that comes very quickly to me, which is probably one reason why the brain software worked so well for me.
And do you use the brain on a mobile? So the brain box was great for capturing ideas on a mobile and then synchronizing it to your desktop. So do you use that, or? Or
So
you
I do
always
not.
do it on a desktop?
I sometimes look at my brain on an iPad. I almost never consult my brain on a phone, on a smartphone, because the screen is just too small. And I think some people manage to do that. I don't know how.
An
I
iPad
need,
is a nice middle ground. That was my experience.
yeah. But the problem is that the software on the iPad is their web software, where editing the brain is nowhere near as powerful or quick as the desktop app.
And yeah,
And so
especially
I
when
wind
you
up
want to access the attachments, if you have any. Yeah.
exactly. So I wind up adding things to my brain only when I'm sitting at my laptop. That is it. Ralph asks, I forgot the astral questions. What are your plans with MCP? I am waiting for MCP features to be added, and I will happily go to town when they are added. And then Ralph also asked, providing MCP access would be very powerful. I'd love to use an AI to browse and provide the relevant thoughts of this among the 620. Something I'd be interested in, as would I, Ralph. I'm hoping, from your lips to God's ears is what I've got to say to that. Mike, if you've already addressed this, please ignore it. Have you changed any methods of organization within the brain, such as yellow and purple, over the years? And if so, how did I go about updating everything? Luckily, I haven't had any major reorgs. I haven't had any moments where I was like, oh my God, I've been doing this wrong, or here's a much, much better way to do things. The yellow and purple probably only came to me maybe a decade ago. I wasn't doing that before. I was just kind of not using color because I find that too many colors are very, very distracting, and it wasn't helpful until I figured out through excuse me, through repeated use, I figured out what the colors could actually really be helpful for.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that
Yeah,
contrary to you, my brain was super colorful based on categories. I dropped in a link to a blog post in the chat where you can see my color palette from the brain that, yeah, I sort
and
of
other people
migrate.
use colors a lot, and they have a legend. They have color coding for different things. I've seen a bunch of things. Also, I don't use features that the brain can do tags and labels and a couple things like that. I don't use any of those because they just crowd the screen. I kind of use thoughts as proxy labels in many cases. Yeah, I mean, you could tag somebody as an actor, or you could have a thought called actors, and then have all the actors connected to the thought called actors, which is a brutally simple way to do it, but that's the way I do it, right? So when I go to Brad Pitt, he's under actors, and so are a whole lot of other people.
Yeah.
Can I show how to add something from this conference to my brain? Yes, I'm now sharing just my brain, and normally I have my brain overlapping with my browser. Let me see if I have anything in my browser that is waiting to be added. Partly, I kind of need to add something that has been mentioned but that isn't in my brain yet. Anybody have a suggestion? And I'm not looking at the chat, sorry, I'm only looking at the Q&A. Let me talk through it for a second, because it's funny. Right this minute, I don't have a thing that I need to add to the brain.
You have natural-born cyborgs by Andy Clark in your brain. That
I
was
do.
suggested by someone. I'm just looking through the.
I wasn't specific enough. Andy Clark. There we go. Yeah. So here's Andy. Here are most of his books, and here's Natural Born Cyborgs, a really, really good book about all this kind of stuff.
Okay. That was a suggestion to add, but
I know. The problem is you wind up playing like Stump the Band here. It's very funny. Stump Jerry's Brain is kind of a fun game in many ways. So we'll think of something, Shakshikanath, and
so from Bill
get that.
billpetro.com.
Oh, billpetro.com. Good. Bill Petro says add a link to my site. Let me do that. Now, you're not going to be able to see me go to your
blog on
website.
history, by the way.
Actually, just in case I've got Bill Petro in my brain already, I don't. Good. All right, so let's go back to my brain talk. I'm going to now go to the, I'm in my browser. I just went to the website. I'm grabbing the URL favicon. I'm dragging it into my brain. And the brain goes and fetches that thought and then adds it. And then what I'm going to do is go to LinkedIn, actually. I'm going to find Bill Petro here. Oops. You probably have a, you're a historian, technologist, blogger, podcaster. That looks like probably the right Bill Petro. So now I'm going to drag that into my brain as well. And here's, if it's the wrong one, I'll figure it out later. I will clean it up a little bit. Capital B, oops, not a space there, but a space there, capital P. And then I'll add a Bill to the Sketch Your Mind conference because that's where I met Bill. And in one of the networking things, I met Saradi. So that's what, when I meet people at events, I put them under the event where I met them. When somebody hosts an event, I put them above the event. And that's how I can kind of tell where I met people. Hopefully that was helpful. Anonymous says, as I see you don't have much written on each thought, are you adding only one-liners? This is a really interesting question because I don't do editorializing in the brain. I don't use the notes field much at all. Other people, Mark Trexler runs the Climate Web. He's a very good and profound brain user, uses many features I don't use or even know about. And he uses the notes field intensely. I don't. I'm very laconic in the brain. I try to have as few words as possible just in the labels because I find that that's my principal use of it. If I want to write something long, I write it somewhere else in Obsidian or in Google Docs. I use Obsidian a whole bunch, but then I have to sort of reach behind my back to map URLs back into the brain, et cetera, et cetera. It doesn't work all that easily. Wesley says, can I talk about link rot? Happy to talk about, and sorry, I can answer John's question right now. It's the model context. MCP is the, brain-related projects. Here we go. Brain plus MCP, model context protocol from Anthropic. That's, sorry, answering the last question there was. So Wesley asked about link rot. There was I don't know if the brain still has this, but there was a feature that would check all the links in your brain and tell you which ones weren't alive anymore. I don't think I ever ran it. And certainly I run into things that are not there anymore. It's just link rot is a fact of the web. They did bake in a feature where if you're staring at a link, it says, look this up in the Wayback Machine, which is brilliant. Because that's what I do. I will go take an old link and I'll put it in the Wayback Machine. And 70% of the time I get something back, and then I'll change the link in my brain to the Wayback Machine link from the original, so I can save the next visitor some time. But basically link rot works that way. And as I said, I don't prune many things. I don't use the delete function much in the brain. I don't get rid of thoughts much because I have this feeling Nassim Taleb says, we never hear from the graveyard. And I agree entirely. Oops, I didn't do that right. So I'm going to connect that to our session here. Nassim Taleb in The Black Swan says, we never hear from the graveyard. We deify people whose startups turn into unicorns and they did really great. We forget about all the other companies and competitors that didn't make it, or the ones who were just way too early. There was a website called 6degrees.com by Andrew Weinrich and a couple other people, which was just way too early. They were in 1997, 6 Degrees, and their patent, the 6 Degrees patent, gets bought by Reid Hoffman later and some other people and gets basically baked into LinkedIn. So the patent is actually, I asked ChatGPT to tell me about the history of the 6 Degrees patent, and here's the answer. I pasted the answer into the notes field below. So that's happening. We are through the questions. What else can I tell you about?
Yeah, I mean, we can also, I mean, if anyone wants to join the stage, I mean, we can invite
Yeah.
people up and then that can, so I'm now enabling that feature. You should see a join stage button. If you press it, then we can allow you in. You will need to, configure your camera.
The April Rennie in the chat is my wife, by the way.
Yeah, and she already connected me on LinkedIn, so we are now connected also. But yeah, so amazing. By the way, if you're looking for linked sketch notes with a Prezi-like presentation feature, I think I can recommend a solution for that called Excalibur and Obsidian. But yeah, in terms of the presentation, this just gave me another kick to upgrade. The problem with Excalibur is it was too much of a successful pilot, or not pilot,
Mm-hmm.
proof of concept. I just built it as a proof of concept to see if I could convert markdown notes into a brain-like thingy, and it actually worked, but worked so well that I lost inspiration to go further. But seeing the fluidity of the brain with 600,000 thoughts, I mean, this is still mind-blowing what this tool can do.
It works beautifully. It really, like, it still hums for me. At one point, I had to upgrade my Mac. Like a couple of years ago, I got an M2 Mac because things were slowing down a bit. And with an M2, it was like, zoop, back to full
And the
speed.
search is really magical. That's my memory of the brain as well. There's a
Yeah, exactly.
question with Marlin, from Marlin here, a new one.
Yes. In the Q&A?
Yes, in the Q&A.
Yes, good. What direction do I think PKMs are moving in for the future? Marlon, a very good question. I think this whole world, here's PKM courses. Let's go back. Here's PKM, which is one of, so there's personal knowledge management, personal knowledge networks, dynamic knowledge repositories, maps of content, personal knowledge graphs, richly linked context mapping tools, Zettelkasten. I think that this field is this huge field of silos. And what saddens me is that the silos aren't looking toward one another yet in order to collaborate. And that's the thing I want to be able to do. I want to be able to collaborate across these tools so that individuals can find their way to the tool that fits the way their brain works best and that helps them express what they're thinking about and what they need to say, but then some way to connect together. Now, AI might be the transducer. LLMs being able to connect each tool to transducers might actually make that, I mean, to each other, might actually enliven or enable that connection. But I'm not sure. So for me, I think we need to reach out. We need to connect and do some sharing. And I think we've got somebody on stage with us.
Yes, we have Rolf here. Welcome, Rolf.
Hi there. I asked that question about MCP, and I'm really intrigued about that possibility. And you mentioned that there is API access to TheBrain, and I haven't used it. I've actually looked at you and TheBrain for the last 2 weeks when I first came across the whole thing. And but now with that combination of having API access and maybe MCP, I think this could be really, really powerful. So my question is that API, is that something that you can use as a user, or would we have to ask TheBrain company to develop such an MCP server to provide the access?
I think somebody has already messed around and done something like an MCP server for TheBrain, but it's not official. And I think TheBrain is working on something like that. My apologies if I'm like spilling some news, but I want to accelerate that process as much as I can. So I think a little public pressure would not be a terrible thing, because I agree entirely with what you said, Rolf. I think that having that ability is going to be transformative.
Yeah. My understanding is correct that the API access is something that you can use yourself. So I could actually develop my MCP server in front of that API and then actually have access.
Yes. In fact, if you have a brain file, you basically need to give it here's the API. If you have a brain, you have to give it the key so that you can actually have permission to run against a particular brain API. And if somebody wants to experiment with mine, and they swear on a scout oath that they're trustworthy, I'm happy to give them an API, a key to mine.
Okay, I'll contact you. Thank you.
Thanks, Ralph.
Awesome. Yeah. In the meantime, Jerry, we have a link from Christina in the chat. You might know about the working group KM Landscape PKM. So it's in the chat. So that's something you could add to your brain.
I do not know about them, and I'm going to have to add them to my brain right now.
Yeah, and above that, there's a question by Anand. How much do you pay per year for the brain?
I was the first stop on the brain's first press tour from that packet that I showed you earlier. And I have been a friend of the firm since then, so I don't actually pay their commercial rates. They have been very, very kind to me that way. So I don't know their pricing. You just have to go to their website and figure out the pricing.
I think it was the last time I used them, it was something like $180 per year, something like that.
By installing the free personal brain, you can do a lot of what I'm doing, a tremendous lot of what I'm doing. What you can't do is share your brain with other people, because for that you need to pay them for a brain web server subscription. When I give you a link to something in my brain, that goes to their web server, and this little icon, cloud icon, I press this icon a couple times a day, and it basically resynchronizes. So right now, all the things I've just added to my brain are not synchronized, but this is now going to initialize a sync, and it'll take 30 seconds, and whatever things I've just added will now be available to everybody who goes and looks at the brain.
Awesome.
Awesome. Other questions? Anybody else want to step on stage? I'm sorry I went so fast. I was excited about the topic.
I'm super excited, super energized. So this was. Oh, here's Bill coming on. So let's wait for him. It takes a little while until all the settings go across, but I know Bill is a big brain user.
And just while we're waiting for Bill to come on stage, Ralph, is Nospam your actual last name, or is that a name you use to not get spam on emails?
You got it. So I just contacted you on LinkedIn with my real name there. So
perfect. Good.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah.
I was about to add you to my brain. I'm like, yeah, no, that looks like a suspicious last name.
That's a suspicious last name. Yeah. In the meantime, Sebastian asks in the questions if you're always at your computer.
So I'm very, very often at my computer. I take it along, wherever I'm going to events. And then if I'm facilitating something, I'm not sitting at my laptop, I'm walking around a room, I will take notes. Usually what I'll do is I'll take notes in Google Keep or something silly like that. And then I'll process those at the end of the day when I'm, decompressing and checking my email and doing whatever else. Go ahead, Bill.
Hi, Jerry. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
I noticed while you were flying around your brain, and I first encountered Jerry's brain years ago when it was an app. But while you were flying around today, I saw something about become the Chuck Yeager of something.
Yeah.
If you go to billpetra.com, today is the 78th anniversary of Chuck Yeager breaking the sound barrier.
Oh, cool.
And I heard him tell his story at the Air and Space Museum in Washington, D.C., part of the Smithsonian Institution. And I recorded all the things he was saying and got to ask him a question afterwards. So go visit billpetra.com and find out the history of Mach 1 breaking the sound barrier with Chuck Yeager.
I love that. I will go do that. I just went to the thought that you mentioned, seeing in the periphery, which is an important thought for me. There's this notion of the noosphere, which is an idea created both by Teilhard de Chardin and also Vladimir Vernadsky, roughly at the same time. They both had this idea of a sphere. You know how we have a biosphere? Well, there's the noosphere, the sphere of reason. And that's one of many ways that people talk about sort of collective sense making or hive mind or whatever, whatever this might be. That, creating a global brain is another way of thinking about it. There was a fellow, Gordon Brander, who was working on a noosphere protocol for a while. He is one of many people trying to pioneer how do we connect all these tools. But I would like the 28 years that I've been like a squirrel kind of curating this one big mind map to be a test pilot of this emerging noosphere in the Big Fungus. That's why I have this connected to the Big Fungus. So thanks for catching that. And anybody who wants to join, let me know. Let's do that.
All right, and we have Christina joined us as well, and we have roughly 1 minute. We're actually at the end of our time, but yeah. So Christina, over to you.
Yeah, can you hear me? Well,
your sound is coming in and out, but go ahead.
Maybe if you turn off the camera, that could be a solution. Let's see if you turn off the camera and just.
Me?
Yes.
Okay. So you can hear me. So okay.
Yes.
Great. So my biggest question is, so after all the great insights and also, do you have any experience how we can bring together different languages of cultures I'm living between different cultures, no? And I'm always struggling with my PKM because of as a different languages, different approaches, different definitions of the what is the meaning of I don't know, as a competence. In another language is a skill. Now, a skill is habilidad, and so are going. Now, so in all the languages, do you have any experiences how we can, in your platform, how you manage this difference, or how we can manage this difference? So just to so if we are multicultural, transcultural nowadays, and we are speaking on our daily basis 5-6 languages, so how we can now, Danica, nine, how we can manage this issue with the platform of the not sketch our mind, not our brain basis, so just to be very essential and efficient.
I'm hoping that the generative AI is an answer to this, because I'm clearly putting everything in my brain in English. There are now very nice translators, but the translators don't know how to connect to the brain. So it's a non-trivial question.
I know
to translate.
the question was not easy. So I know the question was not easy. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. But you're asking a second question, which I like a lot, which is why I went to cultural competence, which is also about, hey, different cultures think differently about knowledge sharing, about collaboration, about everything. How do we adapt to these things? And here I'm hoping that generative AI will be helpful as well, because you could think of a cultural competence coach as being a way of framing some context for an LLM that would say, hey, Jerry, don't ask this direct a question. That's not considered polite in this culture. And I don't know if you mean that or something different.
I'm thinking about the context, also the whole what is in background now of any of the cultures now. So there are a lot of centuries of the wisdom what we what we have on our parts.
And I've been
This is what we are speaking about. And if you are, and I have plenty of the families, they are all of them knowledge workers, and the kids, as my kids also, speaking 5, 6 languages on the daily basis. And how, they don't have one language, but what is just for knowledge preservation, or knowledge distribution, or
Yeah. So funny enough, but
this question is
unfortunately,
not just for you. The question is for all of us. Okay, the question
yeah,
is
it
for
is.
all
It
of
is,
us.
and unfortunately, we do need to bring the conversation to a close.
we've run
Thank
over
you,
our time.
Yeah, we run over our time. Christina, thank you. And just to put in my 2 cents worth, for this reason, I actually keep all my notes in English, even though that's not my native language. But yeah, I think, and there was a comment here that indeed, I think in the US, or if your mother tongue is English, you come across this question much less frequently than if you're speaking a different language. But my solution is just simply codify everything in English. And
Like
that's,
Magyar, for example.
yeah, exactly, an easy language. That's all
Yeah,
right. So
everybody
thanks,
knows
Christina. I'm
Magyar.
taking you off the screen, and I think Jerry, we need to wrap up. This was amazing. I mean, amazing.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
It's been really fabulous. I really appreciate this. And again, thank you for organizing this entire event.
yeah, fantastic. All right. Thank you, Jerry. Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.
And see you in Dave Gray's session just in a couple of minutes.
How do I save the
Cheers.
chat?
"27 years, a path he chose, a knowledge space where connection grows. 600,000 thoughts he's fed, a living map inside his head. It's the brain app, the digital key, revealing patterns for all to see. A decade-long exploration wide, with visual structure as your guide. Ideas link and memory flows, the context surfaces, the insight shows. Not just a file, not just a note, but deep perception now aflow. This is Jerry's brain, a vast domain, a living space where insights reign. A live tour of Jerry's brain, how connecting ideas over time unlocks insight and better decision. From release 1, Oro to the consumer's plight, analyzing trust with a steady light. Open global mind, a purpose clear, to face the challenges of every year. He builds DFT design from trust hand user, the map to understand how visual thinking curated well makes teams resilient, breaks the shell. Apply the principle, design your flow. See the patterns, let the context glow. The personal brain, the path to make decisions better, for goodness sake. This is Jerry's brain, a vast domain, a living space where insights reign.